We can't allow Ukraine to lose a battle on the home front because it lacks enough money to keep school teachers in the classroom and first responders on the job when it's fighting valiantly on the battlefield. So Ukraine is utterly dependent on this aid. We need to join others. Our European friends are have provided 50 billion euro of aid to Ukraine over the next 4 years. The IMF has provided over 15 billion. They need us to do our part for this to hold together as a package. And of course, Israel urgently needs aid as well. And this aid is critical to the national security of America. If Putin were to win this brutal war in Ukraine, next we might see him attacking a NATO ally of ours. We need to stop this.
This is my video update from Athens, Greece on this Monday afternoon, November the 20th. Let's talk about some news. And we start things off with Javier Milei, who is the new president of Argentina. Some people are very happy about Javier Milei. Other people, not so happy. He was a very interesting presidential candidate, but the campaign is over, and now the real test begins. Let's see if he can bring some stability and some calm to Argentina. And his ideas are pretty out of the box, I guess you would say. At least for Argentina, they're out of the box thinking. But we'll see. The real test begins now for Javier Milei. Actually, it begins, I think, December 10th is when he begins to govern, if I'm not mistaken. So, two things that I am going to be on the lookout for with Javier Milei, I think will be very interesting for Argentina, but for the world, is what he's going to do with the peso, and if he really is going to move Argentina onto the U.S. dollar. That's going to be interesting to watch. I think it's a pretty risky move. Maybe in the short term, it'll bring some real results, and it'll bring some stability to Argentina. But in the medium to long term, I don't know. My philosophy, my take on currencies is that if you are a sovereign country, then you control your currency. You have your own currency and you control that currency. The minute you give away your currency, you're really not a sovereign country anymore, are you? And maybe implementing the US dollar, it can work for a smaller sized country or a smaller economy, but Argentina, population of what, 48 million, 50 million? It's going to be that's going to be a very, very risky move for Javier Milei to make. But the world is going to be watching if he really does go through with the US dollar idea that he has. He calls himself a libertarian. I mean, he says he's a libertarian. He's against socialism. He's going to tear down Argentina's socialist structures. He's going to reduce the government and the government ministries and the bureaucracy. So, we'll see. We'll see what he does. But the USD, that's going to be an interesting one to follow. And the other thing that I think is going to be interesting on a geopolitical level is if he is going to stop Argentina's entry into BRICS. He said that he will not take Argentina into BRICS. Argentina got the invitation to enter BRICS just a couple of months ago. And Brazil pushed hard to get Argentina into BRICS. And Milei, he has said numerous times that he is not going to follow through with Argentina's entry into BRICS, and he is going to orient Argentina towards the collective West, towards the United States, I guess you could say, more than the collective West, firmly towards the United States. I think he's a Trump fan as well. His first tweet, or one of his first tweets, I believe, actually addressed Trump, and Trump also tweeted congratulations to Milei as well. Some people say he is the MAGA of Argentina, the Make Argentina Great Again candidate and now president. We'll see. We will see. A lot of people are trying to analyze his moves. I think that we just have to wait and see how he governs. Campaigning is one thing. Coming up with interesting, out-of-the-box, bold, some people may consider crazy ideas or statements. I think that's a whole different deal than actually getting into government and governing. So we'll see how he does. I'll tend to say that he'll probably go the way of Milei. That would be my guess. That's what he reminds me of in a way. Milei's probably more outspoken, more eccentric. Some people would say he's more radical, but he does remind me of Milei. Milei was more of a conservative. She positioned herself at least as a conservative right, where Milei is a libertarian. But when Milei got into power, everyone was expecting some very big things for Italy and big changes for Italy, and it was about 24 hours until she was brought into line. It was very, very quick for Milei. But we'll see. Italy's in Europe and in the EU. Argentina is its own deal, its own set of problems. But that's just where my mind goes right now with Milei. I think of Milei and everything that people were expecting from Milei in Italy, and I just my mind goes to Milei in Argentina, even though you probably shouldn't compare the two. It's probably not correct to compare the two people or the two countries and the two economies. But anyway, we'll see. We will see. Let's not analyze it any further. I think he starts to actually govern on December. I want to say December 10th, but I could be wrong about that. I just remember reading that December 10th is when he gets sworn into office, and that's when he begins his government. So, Javier Milei. I really hope he doesn't make a trip to Ukraine, to Kiev. I hope that's not his first trip. I think he said his first trip is going to be to Israel. I think that's what he said. But he is pro-Ukraine. I've heard some interviews from him where he has made it appear like he's pro-Ukraine. If he's going to orient himself towards the United States, then obviously he's going to be pro-NATO, pro-Ukraine. But if he goes to Kiev early on, well, then we might be seeing the Zelensky curse working very, very quickly against Milei. But anyway, let's just tell Milei, if there's any Milei supporters out there, just try and get in touch with him and tell him don't go to Kiev and don't travel to Kiev. Beware the Zelensky curse. Anyway, that's the big story out of Argentina. And since we're on the topic of elections, we have the big elections in under a year's time, which is going to take place in the United States of America. And by the way, today is the birthday of Joe Bidenopoulos, Greece's favorite son, November 20th. Yes, November 20th. Joe Bidenopoulos, his birthday. Professor Joe turns 81 today. And, in Greece, there's going to be huge celebrations throughout the afternoon, throughout the evening. All of Greece is going to be celebrating. I think the whole city had the day off. I don't think anything was open today because everyone is celebrating the birthday of Greece's favorite son. This is a big holiday for Greece. I'm just kidding. Today's a normal day in Greece. No one is celebrating the birthday of Professor Joe Biden or Joe Bidenopoulos. Anyway, it is his birthday. And because it's Biden's birthday, and because there was a poll that came out just a couple of days ago, which showed that Trump is way ahead of Biden, everyone is freaking out in the United States. Everyone that supports Biden is freaking out in the United States, and they're talking about Professor Joe's age, and if Professor Joe is going to be able to run for re-election, and if it's even realistic to expect Professor Biden to actually serve as president for another 4 years. The New York Post, their cover says, B-Day Blues, Trump takes lead in new poll. Dems hit panic button as Joe turns 81. You know, the interesting part about this cover from the New York Post is not Biden looking grumpy with the little birthday hat. It's the fact that the New York Post still has a Ukraine flag on the top of the top right of their cover page. My God, New York Post. Time to move on, bro. Time to move on, New York Post. Anyway, Politico, they're running an article with the title, Biden campaign facing heat over plans to deal with his age. Everyone recognizes there's an issue. Not everyone thinks it's critical, and there is no consensus on the best way to approach it. There's not a consensus on the best way to approach it. Trouble speaking today. I'm very excited because it's Bidenopoulos' birthday. I'm very, very excited. I'm ready to hit the bars and to go celebrate. It's tradition in Greece when you're celebrating Biden's birthday to drink a shot for every time Biden has called Xi Jinping a dictator. You get really drunk, believe me. Anyway, yeah. So this article from Politico, basically it says that okay, everyone in the DNC, in the Democrat Party, the Biden White House, they're all talking about Biden's age, if he's going to really be able to make it as president of the United States, if he's even going to be elected because of his age. Many people are debating the fact that America, the American voters, could actually not vote for Biden because of his age. Is his age going to be a problem for his re-election? And so they're trying to strategize. How do you overcome this age issue? And they're very upset as well because in this article, they keep on talking about how Trump is only 3.5 years younger than Biden. How come no one is talking about Trump's age? They say that in this article about like 10 times. How come no one is talking about Trump's age? And I think the answer is pretty simple. I mean, Trump's looking good. Biden, not so good. So, I mean, it's really funny that they're actually sitting there and discussing, you know, how come no one's talking about how old Trump is and everyone's talking about how old Biden is. It's not so much Biden's age. It's just the fact that Biden has deteriorated, whether he's 81 or 71 or 61 or 91. It's just obvious that he's not doing well. And with each passing day and each passing week, it's getting worse and worse. So the strategy that they're coming up with, according to Politico, is that they're going to try to focus more on Trump's age. They're going to try to bring that up more often. They're going to position Biden as well as the presidential candidate with wisdom. That's the word that they use. And they say it over and over again, wisdom. That is how they have to present Biden to the American people. He's the wise statesman of not only America, of the world. They even actually say that they're going to have Biden joke about himself and play the part of the lovable, friendly grandpa. They even throw that idea out there in this article. One of the advisors in this article from Politico actually says, just don't even talk about his age. Biden's doing fine. Don't even talk about his age. It wasn't an issue in 2020, and it's not going to be an issue in 2024. So some strategists are even saying that, according to this article. Don't even focus on it. But it's hard not to focus on it when you actually watch Biden in action. So anyway, yeah, that's the Politico article. Try to make Trump look old. Try to make Biden look wise. And every now and then get Biden to joke around about how he's a lovable grandfather. So that's the strategy. The BBC, they have an article with the title, "Is it time for America's elder statesman to retire?" The elder statesman, you see, the elder statesman. That's how they want to present Biden. That would be a good track to get Biden to step aside. Joe, we're going to present you to the world, to America, to the world as the wise, experienced elder statesman who did a great job for 4 years, and it's time now for you to step aside, and the world thanks you. I can see them running with that type of narrative, but it's December. It's almost December, and I don't know if the Democrats have time for another candidate, even if they did decide to go with Gavin Newsom or even Kamala, God help us. It seems like the door is pretty much closed time-wise. I mean, we got less than a year until the elections, so I think they're stuck with Biden unless they think up something really good. I think they're stuck with Joe. Anyway, that is Joe Bidenopoulos, Greece's favorite son. And let's talk about something that is very near and dear and very, very important for Bidenopoulos, and that is Project Ukraine. Today, we had the Pentagon head honcho, Darth Vader himself, Mr. Lloyd Austin. He traveled to Kiev, and he said that the reason for his trip to Kiev, I'll actually read you his tweet. "I'm here to deliver an important message. The United States will continue to stand with Ukraine in their fight for freedom against Russia's aggression, both now and into the future." That's the reason for his trip to Kiev. He's there to tell Zelensky that you have the U.S.'s support for as long as it takes. And if you believe that, well, I've got a beautiful tree in Greece, close to the metro station, to sell you. CIA Burns was in Kiev. Now you have Austin in Kiev. I don't think he's in Kiev meeting with Zelensky in order to deliver the message that the U.S. is going to support Zelensky for as long as it takes. You can do that with a phone call. You don't need to travel to Kiev in order to deliver that message. I don't see this as a good sign for the Zelensky regime. No doubt the Biden White House, the entire collective West, the Pentagon, is very worried about the ongoing collapse of Project Ukraine, and it is collapsing. And some people say it's collapsing a lot faster than they had expected, at least on the front lines. It looks like the Ukraine military is collapsing a whole lot quicker than anyone would have thought, especially in areas like Avdiivka, where the Russians continue to grind down the Ukraine military and continue to advance in Avdiivka. So Lloyd Austin, he is in Kiev, and we had an interview from Zelensky's BFF, Mr. Podolyak. And Podolyak, he said some interesting things during this interview. He said that that Ukraine has to absolutely capture all the territory, including Crimea. Otherwise, Ukraine will never be will never be safe and will never be a real country. So he still has Crimea in his sights. At least that's what Podolyak said. The Zelensky regime is still keen on Crimea. And when he was asked when Podolyak was asked, well, what happened with the super duper spring-summer counteroffensive, and why did it not capture Crimea like you guys were promising? Well, Podolyak, he had some interesting excuses as to why the big super duper counteroffensive failed. He didn't use the word failed, by the way, but he came up with some interesting excuses as to why the big super duper counteroffensive didn't have Zelensky and Budanov and Podolyak fishing and swimming in Crimea like they were promising the entire world. Podolyak also attempted to justify unfulfilled predictions that Ukraine would seize Crimea during the past summer, noting that this assessment was based on an analysis of how many arms Kiev would receive from its Western backers and the impact of sanctions on Russia. According to the official, however, many Western companies remained in the Russian market, allowing the country's government to receive high taxes and use this money to fund its military campaign. Yeah, that's it. That led to the failure of the big super duper counteroffensive. It failed because Ukraine wasn't given laser beams and the Death Star, and it also failed because companies like I don't know, Nestle or Kit Kat chocolates, whatever, because they didn't leave the Russian market. That's why it failed. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Podolyak. The failure to push back Russian troops from the territory Kiev claims as its own could become a breaking point for the country. Do we have an endgame in which we do not enter Crimea, and which would clearly indicate that Ukraine had a historical perspective, he asked. So if they don't take Crimea, according to Podolyak, well, then Ukraine doesn't really have a historical perspective. Do we have even a single chance to survive in historical terms for another 10 to 15 years, he added. I think that Russia is going to dictate the terms of the historical perspective at this point in time. Anyway, that is the interview from Zelensky's BFF Podolyak. And let's now move on to Ukraine versus Hungary. Zelensky versus Viktor Orban. And how about this title from Politico? Ukraine warns Russian ally Hungary to stop blocking EU sanctions. Budapest is trying to block the EU from taking a more aggressive position on punishing Russia for its invasion. Pretty interesting, huh? That Ukraine is warning Hungary. Ukraine, which is not a member of the European Union, is actually warning Hungary. Pretty interesting, huh? Let's see here. What does this article say? Speaking at Politico's Sustainable Future Week. That must be a fun event. Politico's Sustainable Futures Week. Anyway, speaking at this event, Deputy Energy Minister Farid Zafarov said Budapest should drop its opposition to tougher measures as part of the bloc's 12th sanctions package currently being negotiated in Brussels. Russian imperialistic desire will likely spread out of the limits of Ukraine, and therefore Hungary can potentially be the next victim of Russian aggression, he said, arguing divesting from Moscow's fossil and nuclear fuels is in Hungary's national interest. Hungary is still an ally of Russia in terms of energy, whether it is because of their dependence or whether it is due to their political willing, I cannot analyze. EU Energy Commissioner Kadri Simpson warned Hungary earlier this week that by depending on war criminal Russian President Vladimir Putin for energy, it grants Russia the right to manipulate their market. How dare Russia manipulate Hungary's market? How dare Hungary deal with war criminal Vladimir Putin? By the way, EU Commissioner Kadri Simpson, it's the Putin, not Vladimir Putin. It's the Putin. Show some respect to the dictator, war criminal. Come on. How do they expect to deal with Russia when they go on and on about Putin being a war criminal and being a dictator and being? I mean, these guys are such clowns, man. They are such freaking clowns. Anyway, how dare Russia? How dare Russia provide cheap, reliable, stable energy to Hungary? How dare they? How dare you? Don't you see, Hungary, that by getting very cheap, very reliable, very dependent energy from Russia, that people's energy bills are going to be lower, that businesses' expenses are going to be lower, that people are going to be kept warm during the winter, that the factories are going to operate more efficiently? Don't you see what Russia is doing to you? It's time to break away from Russia's cheap, reliable, stable energy imperialism and move over to the EU model, where you can pay 10 to 20 times more for LNG shipped from the United States, which will close down your factories, lead to people getting cold in the winter, lead to unemployment, destroy your economy, take you into a recession. Damn it, Hungary. Don't you see what Russia's doing to you? Oh, man. These guys. All right. Let's move on. Let's keep this video moving on. Let's get to a pre-clown world. From the Kiev Independent, military intelligence denies Russia's claim that Ukrainian pilot defected. Ukraine's military intelligence on November 18th dismissed Russia's claim that a Ukrainian military pilot fled to Russia with his aircraft. So this was in my video yesterday, actually, and the reason that the Ukraine military is coming out with this statement is because they're worried that if this is indeed true and the pilot did defect to Russia with his plane, with his fighter jet, that might turn off the collective West with regards to providing F-16s to Ukraine. They might think twice about the whole F-16 thing, because they wouldn't want a pilot flying an F-16 to, I don't know, fly that F-16 to Russia and show the Russians the working untouched, fully operational F-16. So that would be embarrassing for the collective West. So that's why Ukraine is coming out with all kinds of headlines saying that this story about a pilot defecting to Russia with his fighter jet, this is just Russian fake news, Russian propaganda. What Russia needs to do is they need to put out some video of this pilot and the plane. By the way, they need to put out stuff like that so that it makes Ukraine very nervous, and it makes the collective West very nervous about providing F-16s to the Zelensky regime. And in Moldova, we had elections. I think the second round for local elections in Moldova, and the current government, Sandu's party, I don't think they did too well in the first round. I don't think they suffered a huge loss, but they didn't do as well as the previous elections. And so Sandu, she claimed that these elections, because her party didn't do as well as expected, she claimed that these elections were, you guessed it, rigged, meddled by the Putin. Meddled by the Putin. And this is what Maria Zakharova had to say in response to Sandu's claims that Russia meddled in Moldova's local mayor elections. Zakharova said, and I quote, "It's funny to hear about interference in the Moldovan elections from the president of Moldova, who has Romanian citizenship." Mic drop from Maria Zakharova. Wow. Yeah, that's pretty good. That is a pretty devastating comeback from Zakharova. It's interesting to have to be a president of one country while you have citizenship to another country. Not sure how that works. Anyway, Borrell, since we're on the EU, because Sandu is very much part of the EU Cool Kids Club, Joseph Borrell was giving an interview to Al Jazeera Arabic. I haven't been able to find this interview, but I would be curious to check this interview out, so I can't confirm this 100%. But in an interview with Al Jazeera Arabic, the EU's foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell, was asked, "Is what Israel doing considered war crimes?" Borrell replied, "I'm not a lawyer. That falls within the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court." A minute later, Borrell was asked, "Are the actions of Hamas on October 7th considered war crimes?" Borrell replied, "Yes." The interviewer responded, "Just now, when I asked you about Israel, you said you're not a lawyer, and then wonder why the West is being accused of double standards." We need to find that interview. Someone needs to find that interview. Wow. That is pretty incredible right there. Al Jazeera Arabic interviewing EU's foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell. And if he was asked about Russia, well, he has been asked about Russia. But if the interviewer asked him about Russia, if he considers what Russia did or is doing in Ukraine war crimes, Borrell would not hesitate, not for a second. He would say, yes, absolutely. So that's an interesting interview. All right, I will end this video there. After all, I do have a lot of celebrating to do on Joe Bidenopolis Day. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, Telegram, Rockfin, and Twitter X. And go to the Duran shop, 20% off. Use the code TheDuran20. Take care.